One of the game series I really miss the most is the Bioshock series. I think as far as first person shooters go, these series of games were just something else when they came out at the time. Way above competition. And it's also pretty crazy to think that the first game came out in 2007. 17 years ago now, as of the day of this recording. And the last installment that we got for the Bioshock series, if you exclude the collection that came out in 2016, was Bioshock Infinite that came out in 2013. Again, excluding any of the DLC that came out for that game. And very recently I was talking to one of my friends, it's a bit younger, and they said that they'd had never actually played a Bioshock game, and to me that's just pretty mad to think that some people have just never experienced these games. So that's what today's video is, as I'm going to do a sort of mini retrospective look at all of the Bioshock games, because there are only 3 games in the series, so that's pretty much what I'm going to do. We're going to start from the beginning and go through 1, 2 and then Infinite, and just talk about the general gist of the games. And hopefully by the time that this video's come out and it's finished, we have some more information on the new Bioshock game that's coming out. But probably not, because who knows, there's probably no reason for it. But before I jump into the video, if I could just take a second, if you could just like this video, subscribe to the channel, because there are plenty of retro gaming videos that I post pretty much every day. At the time of this video, this should be the end of the Metal Gear Solid series that I'm playing through. I've done a complete playthrough of every single Metal Gear Solid, and it should be Metal Gear Solid 5 that is going out at this time. And I don't know if you've ever tried to play the Metal Gear Solid series from start to finish, but that is a long commitment, and very soon it will be sort of December, where I traditionally do Star Wars games during December, so there's plenty of content coming out over the next couple of months. So if you could just subscribe to the channel, you're going to keep up to date. That's the best way to see all of my videos. Anyway, on to the first game in the series. I am of course talking about 2007's Bioshock. Now, what can I really say about Bioshock without giving too much of a spoiler to the actual story? I'm going to try and stay away from all story spoilers throughout talking about these games, partly because there is a reason why I won't talk about it in the second one, but I just want to sort of go through these games as they are and just tell you a bit about the games and what it was like at the time when they came out. So as previously mentioned, Bioshock 1 was released in 2007. And just to give you an idea of the gaming landscape at the time, in 2007, Assassin's Creed 1 came out, Portal came out, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare 1 came out, and Halo 3 came out. Also God of War 2, and Lego Star Wars The Complete Edition, and the first Mass Effect. The gaming landscape of 2007 was completely different to what we have now. We hadn't even been introduced to what I would consider AAA gaming as it is, this machine as it is now. There was a lot more sort of independent games. Companies were taking way more risks with their gaming. For example, like I know that nowadays when you look at Ubisoft, it's all copy and paste of sort of that Assassin's Creed formula, especially when they went through a time of like you find a tower, you unlock the map sort of gameplay. But 2007's Assassin's Creed was the very first version of that, I would say, and that's a massive departure to the games that were on the scene at the time, and that goes as well for Bioshock. Initially when you watched the trailers for Bioshock, it did sort of show this sort of like first person shooter, and it looked very generic action-based first-person shooter. But what no one expected was for the story to be so in-depth and for the world to be so immersive when this game came out. Going back to this game and capturing footage for it has made me realise how much of like a horror element there is in this game. There is also a lot of loading scenes, which I completely forgot about, and apparently is completely taken out of the Switch collection. But going back to it, there is actually a huge amount of not only body horror but genuine like slasher horror in this film. A lot of the areas that you sort of explore in Rapture are these dark, dank, horrible places. Apparently I forgot to edit the saving screens out of my PS3 version, because that's what I'm playing this on, is the PS3. But even if you just look at this sort of like opening scene into Rapture, it is just this wild, like disorientating look at a horrible world. The first thing you see in Rapture, you've just been introduced to the world and this amazing underground, like underwater city, and then the first thing you see is a brutal stabbing as soon as you get there, which just implies to yourself that there is not a lot right with this place. And this murder's brutal as well. It's like you hear some disgusting stuff. But just before I continue talking about the actual gameplay and what you're doing in this game, I should just give you a little spoiler-free breakdown of the game. So Bioshock was sort of created by Ken Levine, who also had an involvement in the game series System Shock, and it is sort of considered a spiritual successor. However, I would also say Bioshock is a lot more popular, so System Shock doesn't often get sort of seen. So the game is based sort of roughly in the 1960s. It's not giving you a specific date, and you play as a character called Jack, whose plane crashes in the Atlantic Ocean. You're the only survivor, and you make your way to a lighthouse, which then takes you to an underwater city called Rapture, which is a utopia designed and created by Andrew Ryan, who is sort of a presence throughout the entire game. But when you get to Rapture, you realize things are not as what they seem, and everything has been sort of on the sort of like the downfall of Rapture, and you have just arrived for the downfall. You pick up a radio and you start speaking to this guy called Atlas, who helps you along the game, and I'm not going to go into any further spoiler context there, because I think a lot of people have played this game, a lot of people know what the twist is, a lot of people know where the story goes, so I'm just going to leave it here, because if anyone hasn't played this game, you probably should give it a go. But going back to talking about the gameplay, so at the time of like the gaming landscape just didn't have games like this as much. I don't think many sort of like first person shooters have really integrated the RPG elements that this game has, and a lot of games really did not introduce this sort of like horror element, not a lot of like dark, dank sort of looking areas. And as you go continue through the game, you see a lot of other sort of like creepy things. There are these characters called the Little Sisters and the Big Daddies, who were just incredible forces in the game. So here's a little thing as well. For at the time, I used to read the sort of Xbox official magazine, and the Xbox 360 official magazine, that is. And at the time when this game first came out, they said that if you put this game on the hardest difficulty and tried to fight a Big Daddy, the Big Daddy was like categorically the hardest enemy in any video game. Now, I have no idea how they just decided that. It's probably just propaganda or just like marketing to say something like that. But I fully believed that for ages, because they are tough to take down. Like, you really have to like use a lot of your like abilities or items that you've been saving to destroy a Big Daddy. And if you get caught unaware and you don't know how to play this game, unless you're playing on the easier difficulties, these big bastards here, the Big Daddies, will just absolutely wreck your shit. But they're kind of like an optional boss as well, because if you don't interact with them, if you don't mess with them, they don't really mess with you. Like, I can't think of a time in the game where one of these Big Daddies attack you without just cause. So you may be asking, like, why would you attack a Big Daddy if they're just going to absolutely ruin you in a game? So the reason why you might want to attack a Big Daddy is because there are these they have these little sisters with them who have all of the Atom. And Atom in this game is like a substance that gives you all of your sort of like powers, your abilities, and sort of everything else. It's kind of like the XP, and you get to make a choice throughout the game whether you want to use it for good or for bad, and whether you want to like kill the little sisters or you want to like save them, and that continues into the actual story of the game. But this game is also very surprisingly gory and is just like quite horrific. I also enjoy the Art Deco sort of look of these games. I also enjoy the physics engine. If you just saw there was I electroshocked the water, and that killed everything that was in the water, which I thought was quite cool. But yeah, I'm not going to talk too much further about Bioshock 1, just because I think it's one of them games that everyone should have played. If you haven't played it, go back and play it right now. You can pick this game up for like £2-3 on the Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3. It's not hard to get this game, but it's such a good game. Now, the next game I'm going to talk about in this series is the sequel of this game, and I have a little bit of a confession to make. Up until the creation of this video, when I started to prepare for this video, I had never actually played the second one in the series, and that of course is Bioshock 2, and I have it now. It's mine. Now, Bioshock 2 just completely missed me when I was younger, and I have some theories as to why this game was sort of missed out, and it seems like a lot of people just didn't also play this game as much, which is very, very weird, very strange indeed. Because going back to this game is awesome. I really, really enjoyed my time playing this game, and it made me think, like, why did I miss playing this game at the time? So Bioshock 2 was released in 2010 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, along with Windows games. And in this game, you return back to Rapture, and it takes place sort of 8 years after the events of Bioshock 1. Now, in this game, you play as a protagonist called Subject Delta, who is like a prototype Big Daddy. That's all I can really explain to him. So now you get all the weapons that the Big Daddy gets. Like, you get this big drill, you get like a rivet gun. There's so many like interesting weapons that you get in this. And when doing research about this game, I also found out that it had a multiplayer element to the game, and a lot of people loved the multiplayer. The multiplayer takes place in the sort of like prequel to the downfall of Rapture during the Rapture Civil War, which sounds pretty cool, but unfortunately I didn't really get a chance to play it because PS3 servers no longer exist. Now, when the game came out, it did receive some pretty decent reviews, but there were some criticisms for the game, mainly saying that it was sort of like a very slow start to the game, and it didn't really do a lot to distinguish itself from the original Bioshock. And I feel like that is very similar with myself. Like, at the time when I was younger and this game came out, I did not bother to even pick this one up, mainly because I thought it was just a copy and paste of the first game, and I thought the first game ended so well that I just didn't think a sequel would make any sense whatsoever. I have no idea why I thought these things, because I haven't actually ever played this game until I came up to capture footage for this now. And honestly, it's so good. It's one of the best games I've ever played. It's one of the best one of the best Bioshock games I've ever played, let's be serious. And it might actually be my favourite in the series. Like, going back to this, like, I play a lot of games in retrospective, and it takes a lot for me to start playing a game for capture footage for me to be then like, actually, I'm just going to continue playing this game. And that's exactly what happened with this. Like, after I captured some footage for this game, I just stopped and I just went sort of back and played this game more. I'm not at the time of recording, I haven't completely finished the game yet, but it's one of those games that I go back to. It's just one of them casual games that I will just play now. I spoke to a few friends about this game as well, and they kind of came under the same assumption with me, that like the game just didn't seem to be any different from the first one, and why would you make a sequel? Which is interesting. I don't know if there was an issue with like the marketing, or like just wasn't presented well, but reading into it as well, the game did sell more than 3 million copies, but according to a few sources, it didn't meet the publisher's expectations and was considered a financial flop, which is a shame, because behind that statistic there is a fantastic first-person shooter game. It is very similar to the first one, but it's like the first one, but everything's done better. If that makes sense. It takes like it's like they've taken the gameplay of the first one and just amped it up and tweaked everything in a way that just makes it that little bit more fun, that little bit more like better feeling to play. Playing as this like prototype Big Daddy, you feel like clunky, and like your movement is a bit sort of slow, but then that makes sense for the character. It's like that RoboCop game that came out, when your character is a sort of slow moving tank. That's kind of what it's like here. That being said, the controls are very responsive and the gameplay is very fun. At no point did I ever feel like that was a hindrance to my character. It just felt much better, or felt like that's how this character is supposed to be played. And one of the things I do really like in this game is that there continuously is a new antagonist introduced into the game as the big sister, who's kind of like I'd say like a female version of a big daddy, whereas the big daddies are sort of like tanks, heavy weapons, sort of like heavy armor sort of people. The big sister is like all speed and all sort of like, I'd say, assassination. Like it's a lot of like quick movement and hard to like pin down and actually get them. Personally, I think it's a very fun addition to the game, and they are one of the coolest characters in the game, but like that's little and far between. But there's not really much more I can really say about the Bioshock 2, just because I just haven't had a lot of chance to sort of complete it, sort of like put my thoughts in the game, as it was a game, like I said, that I missed during when it first released. But I am having a lot of fun at playing it at the moment. But that brings us on to the final game in the Bioshock series. But just before I continue, if you have got to this point in the video series, if you could just like this video and subscribe to the channel, because there are plenty of videos coming out over the next couple of weeks, all to do with retro gaming or older video games, and a like and subscribe massively helps the channel. But anyway, back to the video and back to me talking about this series of Bioshock, with our next game in the series, and one of probably the most successful and most famous games of all time, Bioshock Infinite. Bioshock Infinite was released in 2013 for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, along with the sort of PC as well, or Windows games for Windows, or whatever it was called at the time. And honestly, this is one of the games that I played quite a lot. I was fully invested in the hype in this game, whether that was for good or for better, and played it. I absolutely adored this game, which is weird because I don't know why I missed the second one just to love the third one. So strange, because like, I don't know, maybe because it was different and it was slightly stranger and it was sort of interesting is why I came back to the series after that. When this game was released, it received pretty much praise across the board, critical acclaim from everyone. Many people loved the story of this game. I particularly really like the story of this game. The visual design and art direction is incredible, and by many people is considered one of the greatest games of all time ever made, and I can see people arguing that. I think if you were to compare it to modern standards now, maybe it doesn't fall as like in that category as much as you'd think, but I still think creatively and artistically it is way above everyone else. So just getting into about this game. So this game is set in, well, apparently it's set in 1912, but in like a steampunk dystopian version of our universe. And the protagonist's name is Booker DeWitt, who I won't talk too much about. I won't go into the spoilers of this game, because this is another game that has an amazing story, an amazing twist, and an amazing, just in generally great writing, top tier. But basically, going back to it, Bioshock Infinite, set in 1912 in a steampunk sort of floating city-state called Columbia, that's based up in the clouds. And the first time you see this Columbia is amazing. It's one of them things to me that if you're invested in the story, you're just so, because the game is very good at investing you in a story, and it is amazing to see these things. I remember at the time watching this, and this is what good art direction in a game does. So I remember at the time watching this and thinking, I have not felt this amount of amazement about a game setting since the very first Bioshock, when for the first time you see Rapture. And the switch here from the first Bioshock, where you had this sort of deep, dark, dank, awful world that is crumbling, to this thriving, amazing, bright and beautiful world in the third game. It really was just like a change of setting for the better, to show that even like if a world appears to be brilliant, it's still not great, because there are some deep horrible things going on in this universe. Just because it all looks amazing and it all looks like they've all found God, they are terrible people that live in Columbia. So the backstory of this is that the steampunk world was revealed at the sort of World Fair, and then during a rebellion, the Boxer Rebellion, there was Colombia separated from the United States and is now its own independent nation that focuses on American exceptionalism. The founder of Colombia is this guy called Comstock, who is worshipped as a prophet, like a religious prophet, while the founding fathers of America are seen as like godlike entities. Now, one of the things that's massive in this game is the theme of institutionalized racism and elitism. And your character DeWitt, Booker DeWitt, gets sort of caught up in the middle of all of this, where he's being told by everyone that he is the person, the sort of like the Antichrist that will destroy this world and the way that they live. And you kind of do fulfill that prophecy without trying to sort of spoil the game too much. And the actual gameplay of this is very similar to the other sort of Bioshock games. I would say it's probably a little bit more gory, but it is very, very fun. Probably the most fun that you have in a Bioshock game in terms of combat, where it is very speed based, it is very fast, and it is 100 miles an hour at all times. I won't get too much into the story just because the story is very, very complicated and very, very hard to explain. So I would say this is one of the things that you just have to play yourself. Like, I can't really talk too much about it. At the time this game came out, it's still considered one of the best games ever made, and it artistically looks incredible. So I would just say play it yourself. Have a go. It's easy to find. You can get this game. I picked this game for £3 up in CEX on the PS3. It's even cheaper on Xbox 360 and is available on most things. But yeah, that's me talking about Bioshock Infinite and the Bioshock series. If you have enjoyed this video, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, because there'll be plenty more videos coming out over the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much for watching. My name's been the Retro Gaming Goose, and that's been my sort of kind of breakdown of the Bioshock series. I wanted to talk a bit more about Infinite, but I really just felt like I couldn't talk too much about it. Thank you for watching.